But first, we're talking about love and money and the differences between men and women when it comes to saving and spending. Regular contributor and financial planner Rob Wilson is here to talk about money and your mate. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it doesn't always go so easily when men and women come together with money.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And you mentioned that 30% of couples actually mention that this causes the most stress in their relationship. So this comes before intimacy, it comes before children, it even comes before the in-laws. And so if you want to stay happy, excuse me, after Valentine's Day, having your financial affairs in order is something that's going to be very important.
And I mean, it seems like men and women do approach things differently. Is that true?
Well, of course. I mean, a lot of areas of our lives, men and women think differently. And I think money is one of the most prevalent areas where that's true. And you know, when you take your vows, one of the vows is to stay together, you know, richer or for poor. And so if you're going to do that, you've got to talk about these things before you actually get married to make sure that these issues are going to be out in the forefront. So the first point that I have here is that there was a study by Ohio State that said that married couples who got married and actually stayed married for 10 years was able to build more wealth than their single counterparts. And you can think about this for a number of reasons, because it's obviously cheaper to maintain one household than it is two. You only need one Comcast subscription. You're both paying into the rent and the utilities and so forth. And so, you know, marriage kind of sounds like the word merger, and that's almost what it is. So your expenses are lower and you're able to save more money. So marriage is actually good for your wallet. Assuming that you stay married, because marriage is a good way to build wealth and divorce is the quickest way to destroy it. So the second thing is money is definitely one of the leading causes of divorce. And so you know that if you don't have your financial affairs squared away and talk about these things, it's going to cause some stress throughout your marriage and cause some difficulties. And what surprises me is that it's often more difficult for couples to talk about money than it is to talk about, you know, sex and other things in their relationships. Less than 50% of couples actually have had a financial discussion prior to getting married. And one of the big problems with that is opposites tend to attract. So a spender is going to attract a saver. Someone who wants to be risky with their investments is going to attract someone who's risk averse. And so that could become a problem. And then the last thing is roles are typically changing now. In 1970, about 4% of wives made more than their husbands. In 2007, that number was up to 22%.
Wow.
So roles are definitely changing, and it's not always easy to adapt to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about some of these common issues. And do you say financial infidelity? What is that?
Sure. So a good friend of mine pointed out that, you know, there are a number of areas of contention in a marriage. And he said that men will lie to their wives about how they look in a certain outfit or something, and women will lie about how much it costs. Okay, and so it may seem simple at the time, but these issues are going to build up. And so if you're lying about what you're purchasing and how much it costs, and you leave the store and you put it in a different bag so it doesn't seem like you got it from the big high-end store, those things are going to eventually show themselves if you have some financial difficulties down the road. So you need to be upfront about what your financial situation is, your credit, how much debt you have, and so forth. Another big issue is, do you have separate accounts or do you maintain joint accounts?
Yeah, I never know. Is one better than the other?
Actually, I suggest a mix of the two. You probably want to have joint accounts for the things that you're going to be saving together for. So maybe you want to have a joint account for going on a vacation or paying the rent and utilities and things that you're sharing. But I do think that you should have some sort of financial autonomy and have your own separate accounts. And, you know, how are you going to surprise your spouse for Valentine's Day if you, you know, you're looking at the same bank accounts all the time? Another point of contention is the share of the bills. And this is even true when going out to dinner and entertainment. Who pays for what? So I suggest that you sort of, as far as the bills go, the spouse with the higher salary pays a higher percentage of the bills. And even when you're going out to dinner and so forth, people suggest a 3-to-1 ratio. So the spouse that makes more sort of pays for 3, and the spouse that makes less, you know, pays 1, you know, out of the 4 when you're going out. Paying debt is a big one.
Oh yeah, especially now with all these student loans.
That is the biggest thing. Does one spouse maybe have a higher student loan debt or credit cards versus the other one, and how are you going to handle that should the other spouse sort of take on that burden with you? you, and different goals. Do one of you want to start a business, go back to school? If one of you gets a big job, are you willing to move away from your family? These are big decisions in your life, and you've got to talk about these before they come up.
All right, well, you've got great advice on what we can do. It's not an end thing. It's not an either or. You can work through it. So starting by communicating.
You've got to communicate early, and you've got to communicate often. So even when you're dating, I mean, hey, if you're out on your date for Valentine's Day and your date's card get declined, by the restaurant, that might be a red flag for you to have some discussions. But even if you're married, you want to set aside a specific time to talk about this, because it can be stressful. So you want to set aside a specific time, A, to make sure that you do it, and to B, make sure that you can manage the stress around it, segregate that time so it's not creeping into other areas of your life.
So it doesn't become a confrontation, address it before then.
Absolutely.
All right, understand the other point of view.
Yeah, so, a lot of the things and the ways that you feel about money most likely came from the way your parents, dealt with money. So if your parents were spenders, you are likely a spender. If your parents saved and put money under mattress, you probably feel the same way. So you've got to understand what the other person's upbringing was and what contributes to their feelings about money, so you can understand where they're coming from.
Nice. And I like this one, set goals together. Yeah,
you have to do that. If there is a business down the road or school, you've got to talk about these things so that one spouse doesn't feel like they're left out and the decisions are just effectively being made for them.
Right.
And the last thing is, and I know that this is not a particularly romantic topic to discuss right before Valentine's Day, but you may want to think about instituting a prenuptial agreement. Now, the thing is that people don't realize, everybody has a prenuptial agreement. It's called divorce law. So you can either, if you're going to get divorced, you can either go through the courts and have them manage it, or you can set things up beforehand and take it out of the government's hands.
Yep, great advice. Thank you so much, Rob. Rob Wilson, financial planner with Blazer Capital Management and regular contributor here on Money Mondays on Pittsburgh Today Live.